no matter how much people like to say they do. They hum in the quiet, a low, mechanical breathing that rises and falls between beeping monitors, rubber soles on waxed floors, and the muffled voices of people clinging to routines so they don't unravel under the weight of what lingers in the silence. In our ICU, there was always one room that didn't breathe like the rest. Room 206, bed 6. The staff just called it her bed. It didn't matter that the system kept it active. It never had a patient in it. Not anymore. The bed was listed as restricted, NOE, in red type on our internal charting screen. A warning that didn't explain itself. A digital scar that most of us learned not to poke. No official memo ever came down from administration, and no supervisor would answer directly when questioned about it. You just learned, quickly, that some places in this hospital had rules older than your paycheck. She was a float nurse, new to our unit, pulled from telemetry to help cover a short shift. Her name was Marta, and she had that energetic, naive confidence that comes before a hospital truly gets under your skin. Around 2:30 a.m., she went to the far end of the ICU looking for fresh linen. The storage closet was full, but she wanted a clean pillowcase. Said she'd check the cabinet near bedsick. We all looked up when we heard her gasp, not scream. Just a sharp, startled intake, like she'd walked through cobwebs. She stumbled back from behind the curtain, clutching her chest, eyes wide and watering. Her hands trembled. At first, we thought it was a panic attack. Then we saw her wrist, 5 distinct bruises blooming across her skin like dark petals, spaced like fingertips, too narrow to belong to any of us. She didn't return for her next shift. HR said she submitted a resignation at 6:45 a.m. from her car in the parking lot. The temperature near bed 6 would drop suddenly around the same time every night to 34 a.m., give or take a minute. No one touched the thermostat. Maintenance checked the ducts. Nothing, but you'd feel it. The subtle rush of chilled air, the way it clung to your scrubs, how your breath would fog up even when the rest of the unit was warm. One nurse claimed her stethoscope frosted over. Another found her badge demagnetized after walking past the bed. We joked at first. We always do. Gallows humor is a nurse's best shield, but it stopped being funny when the monitor turned on by itself. I was staying late one night, catching up on discharge notes, when I heard the soft double beep of a heart rate monitor. I looked up and there it was. Bed 6. Active vitals. Steady 76 bpm o 297%. Resp rate 18. The screen glowed soft green in the low light of the hallway. But the bed, it was empty. No patient, no leads, no sensors attached to anything. I waited. Sometimes the machines glitched, especially if someone left a sensor unplugged. But when I stood, the monitor pulsed again. The numbers were climbing, stabilizing. It wasn't loud, just a subtle groan, like weight shifting across a frame that shouldn't be bearing any. I don't even remember crossing the floor, but I was suddenly there right at the curtain, fingers inches from the fabric. The cold was worse now, thick in the air like standing in a freezer, and I could smell something faint but sharp. Antiseptic, yes, but beneath it burnt lavender, like an old woman's perfume melted into electrical wires. I didn't scream. I didn't speak. I just stared. She looked young, early 30s, maybe lying perfectly still, her pale skin almost translucent in the dim lighting. Her lips were parted slightly, eyes closed, dark hair fanned out over the pillow like something arranged for a viewing. She wasn't on oxygen. No IVs. No monitors hooked to her body. But the machine beside her was registering her vitals, like it had a job to do. I backed away. The curtain slid shut behind me. The beeping stopped. When I reported it, the night supervisor didn't blink. He didn't call security. He didn't log it. He just looked at me and said, "You weren't supposed to see her." The next day, I accessed the archived incident reports, a dusty corner of the system most nurses never need to touch. It took an hour of digging, cross-referencing dates and times, filtering by unit and bed number, and there it was. 2011. Patient. Female. Unidentified. Brought in with acute respiratory collapse. Ventilator. Malfunctioned. Psychoshicoded. They tried for 18 minutes. Flatlined at 2:34 a.m. Time of death logged. Body removed. And then, buried deep in the notes of something strange. The ventilator that had failed began running again after being disconnected. No backup battery. No attached patient. It continued cycling for exactly 2 minutes at 2:34 a.m. the next night. And the next. Until they removed it from the ICU. It still runs. Now, at 2:34 a.m. every night, a tech from facilities walks past that locked equipment room and hears it the slow hiss and click of artificial breath. They've removed the plug, documented the lack of energy draw, run every diagnostic. The manufacturer couldn't explain it. Defective sensors, they said. Phantom readings. But none of us believed that. Not anymore. Arthur was a night nurse. Like me. He was meticulous. Never skipped vitals. Never fumbled charting. The kind of guy who triple-checked restraints. Even if the patient was sedated. One night, he passed bed 6 and heard whispering. He thought it was the old man in 208. He went to check. Nothing. Then he saw the light on inside. Bed 6. No one had gone in. The door was locked from the inside. Impossible. Unless someone had been there before shift change. When security opened it, Arthur swore he saw a shadow standing at the foot of the bed. He went home early. Didn't come back for weeks. When he finally did, he wouldn't speak above a whisper. He avoided the end of the ICU entirely. Transferred to day shift. Said the night wasn't safe for her anymore. The next week, the sheets on bed 6 were changed. But not by us. It was around then we started noticing the little things too small to be urgent. Too strange to ignore. Oxygen tanks outside room 206 would show usage despite sealed valves. And no recorded entry. The scent of lavender burnt, synthetic. Decaying wood drift out from the room, even when no one had stepped inside for hours. One night, someone found a folded paper crane on the floor near the foot of the bed. No one admitted to leaving it. Here were no origami supplies on the unit. But the paper matched the pharmacy order forms kept in a locked drawer at the nurse's station. That drawer was untouched. Then the new patient arrived. Young guy. Early 40s. Cardiac complications. They put him in bed 5, directly next to the restricted bed. I was doing rounds when I saw him staring across the curtain, pale. Sweating. Pupils wide. I asked if he needed anything. He just whispered. She was sitting on the edge of the bed. I thought maybe he was hallucinating meds. Stress. ICU delirium. It happens. But he kept repeating it. She sat there. Her hair smelled like smoke and flowers. She said she was waiting for the next breath. That phrase stuck with me. Waiting for the next breath. Like the space between ventilator cycles. Like a ghost, addicted to the rhythm of a machine that failed her. He coded at 2:34 a.m. the next night. No preceding symptoms. Alarms. Silent. When we found him, he was slumped toward bed 6. Lips parted like he'd been trying to speak. He survived, but barely. When he woke up days later, he couldn't form sentences. Neurologically sound, they said. Brain scans clear. But his words were gone. Just gone. Like something took the part of him that speaks and left the rest intact. Admin revoked badge access. A hard key was issued, only one, kept by Carol, the charge nurse who'd worked this unit for 26 years. Lights were cut, monitor removed, equipment sealed. Still, every night, at 2:34, the air around room 206 dipped in temperature, and from behind the sealed glass, if you looked closely, you could swear the curtain moved. It was a habit, honestly. Boredom. Paranoia. Maybe some piece of me still wanted to believe it was just faulty equipment and stressed out nurses. But, that night, the feed for room 206 blinked on by itself. The timestamp flickered to 2:34 a.m. The room, supposedly dark, glowed dimly green on screen. In the center of the bed was a figure, obscured by flickering pixels and static, but unmistakably human. Thin limbs, long dark hair, a patient gown crumpled like it hadn't been worn in years. And then, without transition, the image changed her face, right up against the lens, lips pressed to the camera glass, whispering something I couldn't hear, except I felt it in my chest, in my bone, not words, intent. When I tried to replay it, the file was gone. Not corrupted, not redacted, just gone. The footage from that hour didn't exist. IT said the server reset. Power glitch. Routine maintenance. I didn't argue. What was I supposed to say? That a ghost hijacked our surveillance. Later that week, a janitor collapsed outside the room. Said he saw a woman inside, floating just above the bed, like she'd never needed the floor to begin with. His pulse spiked at 210. They had to sedate him just to get him off the ground. He didn't show up for work again. Left town. His supervisor said he mailed his badge back in an envelope sealed with a band-aid. At first it was just a silhouette standing beside my own bed, in my apartment, unmoving, head to. Then came the dreams where I was in the ICU again, except everything was reversed. Machines whispered, the walls bled, and every bed was empty except for hers. She would always be breathing, shallow, rhythmic, mechanical, like the ventilator never stopped. Sometimes, in the dream, she would open her eyes. They were all pupil, no white, just a mirror of everything I was afraid of. And one night, I stopped dreaming, because I woke up at 2:34 a.m. in my own room, to the sound of a ventilator. Not a memory, not my mind playing tricks. I heard it clear as day. The hiss click, steady, slow, familiar. I followed the sound, heart hammering. It was coming from my bathroom. The door was cracked open, just a sliver of dark beyond. I pushed it open. No lights on, no machines inside, but the mirror was fogged, as if someone had been breathing against it, and written in the center, with a fingertip, was one word. That was the last straw. I turned in my resignation that morning. I didn't explain. I didn't pack my locker. I walked out and never looked back. The hospital didn't call. HI processed it without follow-up. I think they understood. It's been 2 years now, but every so often, at 2:34 a.m., I'll wake up cold. My bedroom feels heavier. The air is denser, and the silence has weight, like something is holding its breath beside me. And last week, a package arrived at my door. No sender, no return address. Inside was a sealed folder. Yellowed paper, laminated cover, an incident report from 2011. One line was underlined in faded red ink. I closed it, tossed it, but later that night, I dreamed again. She was sitting at the foot of my bed, her hair draped across her shoulder, her hands folded neatly in her lap, and she whispered, with a softness that made my blood run cold, "You promised to come back. Now I leave a fan running while I sleep. Not for the breeze, but for the sound. Something to drown out the hiss. Click. That always starts around 2:34. You're safe now, but just in case, don't pull the curtain." This happened about 7 years ago, long enough that some details are fuzzy, but not long enough that I've forgotten how it made me feel. At the time, I was working as a night nurse at a mid-sized hospital just outside Tulsa, but it was my first one in the ICU. The night shifts were usually quietly peaceful. Actually, once the lights dimmed and visitors left, the machines took over. All you'd hear was soft beeps, the occasional alarm, and the hum of the HVAC system rattling through the vents. There was one room at the far end of the ICU hallway room, 209, that nobody ever seemed to use. It was listed as "Do Not Assign" in our internal system. No explanation. No red tape across the door. It looked perfectly normal. Just untouched. Like a hotel room that was always clean but never booked. I asked about it once, kind of offhand. One of the older nurses just said, "Oh, that room has a story," and left it at that. I thought she was joking. Every hospital has its quirks, but that changed one night. I was covering a double shift for a coworker around 2:45 in the morning. I was refilling meds at the station when I heard something strange. A steady hiss, like a ventilator cycling. Slow, rhythmic, mechanical. Definitely a ventilator. At first, I thought maybe a patient had been admitted and the board hadn't updated yet, so I checked the system. No new patients. No recent activity in room 209. Still flagged do not assign, but the sound was unmistakable. I left the station and walked down the ICU. As I got closer to room 209, the sound got louder. Hiss, dot, dot, click. Hiss, dot, dot, click. I stood outside the door for a few seconds, unsure if I even wanted to go in, but curiosity overruled hesitation. I pushed the door open. The light was on, not bright, but that soft, overhead yellow, the kind that makes everything look faded. The bed was neatly made, crisp sheets, no visible indent, but the ventilator next to it was running, not idle running. And the monitor was active, O2 sat, 98%, heart rate 6, respiratory rate 20. It was like someone invisible was hooked up to it. I stepped in slowly, half expecting a supervisor to pop out and tell me I was being pranked. But no one did. The room was ice cold, colder than the hallway. I stood by the bed and watched the ventilator cycle. I followed the tubes. They weren't connected to anything. They just hung there. And that's when I noticed the scent. Lavender. Soft, faint, old lady perfume kind of lavender. It was coming from the pillow. I leaned closer. There was an impression, not deep, just enough to suggest someone had laid there recently. I don't know why, but I lifted the corner of the sheet. Underneath was a visitor pass. Faded, like it had been there a long time. Name, Holloway, M. Date, September 9th, 2003. Relation, mother. I just stood there, staring at it. Then without warning, the ventilator stopped. The monitor blinked out. Everything powered off. The silence hit like a slap, and I left. Quickly. I didn't mention it to anyone that night. Didn't want to sound insane. But 2 days later, I couldn't help myself. I asked Caroline, older nurse who'd been there forever, what the deal was with 209. She didn't laugh, she didn't smirk. She just stared at me for a second and said, "You went in there, didn't you?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. She sighed and opened a drawer in the nurse's station ID. Never seen anyone use. Inside was a single file folder. Yellowed paper. Laminated cover. She slid it to me. It was an incident report. Patient. Unidentified female. Date of death. September 9th, 2003. Time 2:47 a.m. According to the report, she was brought in after collapsing at home. Severe respiratory failure. They put her on a ventilator. It ran fine at first. Until it didn't. Something malfunctioned. The machine choked. She died mid-cycle. But here's the thing, after she passed, the ventilator kept going, even after being unplugged. Even when replaced with a new one. They brought in a tech from the manufacturer. He ran every diagnostic, said it shouldn't be functioning. It had no power. Experts still can't explain how it stayed on. After that, the room was sealed. No one was allowed in. For a long time, but eventually, some admin looked at the usage logs and decided it was a waste of space. They quietly unflagged it, started letting new hires use it for breaks or naps. And then things started happening again. People hearing voices, machines turning on by themselves. One nurse claimed she heard a lullaby playing from inside the walls. Eventually, they flagged it again. No explanation. That night, I swore I wouldn't go near it again. But you know how that works. Curiosity. Or stupidity. Or both. A week later, I was walking past room 209. It was after 2:40 a.m. again. I was just tired, finishing my rounds, and then I heard it. The ventilator. Hiss. Dot dot dot. Click. The light was already on. No one had turned it on. I paused in front of the door. Tried to keep walking, but the door creaked open. Just enough for me to see inside. Same scene, vitals on the monitor. But this time, I heard something else. A whisper. Is she coming back tonight? Right in my ear. I spun around. Nothing. The hallway was empty. I turned back, toward the door, heart pounding. The room was dark again. Lights off. Monitor blank. Ventilator ... silent. I walked back to the station in a daze. Didn't say a word to anyone, but that whisper stuck with me. Soft. Curious. Like a child waiting for bedtime. So I did something stupid. I hid a small camera in the room the next night. Tucked it into the vent. Battery pack. Motion trigger. I wasn't even supposed to be on shift. But I came in anyway. I watched the live feed from my phone. For most of the night, nothing happened. Then, at 2:47 a.m., the camera started recording. First, the bed creaked, like weight pressing down. The ventilator turned on. Monitor lit up. Oxygen, 98%. Heart rate 64. Then something moved across the lens. Just a blur, and the audio kicked in. That same voice. This time, clearer. She said you'd come back. I closed the stream, yanked the SD card. I didn't want to see any more. I gave the card to Carol, told her everything. She took it, but never said anything back. A few days later, room 209 was locked again. Badge access revoked. Lights cut. No explanation. No announcement. It's been years now. I don't work there anymore. But sometimes, I dream about that room. The steady hiss of the ventilator. The cold lavender air. The shape pressing into the pillow. And that voice. You came back. You're safe now. But just in case, don't look behind you. This one didn't happen to me directly, but I was on staff when it happened. The story went around fast, like blood through a fresh fall. No one wanted to talk about it too loudly, especially since it involved someone we knew, someone we liked. Her name was Elena. She was a night nurse like the rest of us, quiet kind, early 30s. She worked 3 12s a week in the trauma ICU, and people loved her because she didn't gossip and didn't slack. The kind of person you trust to triple check your charting when you're too tired to see straight. She was also a little old-fashioned. The only nurse I knew who still clocked in using her eye card at the physical wall terminal instead of just signing in through the app. She said it made her feel grounded. Real. She'd joke. Like my shift actually started. I was off the night it happened, but the story came in fragments. Around 11:15 p.m., Elena had a seizure in the staff bathroom. A bad one. She'd never mentioned a history of epilepsy, but apparently she had an undiagnosed vascular condition. They said her vitals were crashing before the co-team even got to her. She died in her scrubs, 5 feet from the supply cabinet. I heard that one of the EMTs cried afterward. She was declared dead at 11:46 p.m., and by morning, her badge was turned in. The board cleared. Her locker contents boxed. It was a gut punch, but we all grieved differently. Some of us cried, some just kept our heads down. But within a few days, most had tried to move on. Hospitals don't stop for ghosts, not even good ones. Then her badge logged in again. It was 4 days later. A charge nurse pulled up the night attendance report and saw Elena's name in green. Clocked in at 11:14 p.m. She thought it was a glitch. Maybe someone reactivating her badge by mistake. But when security checked the system logs, they confirmed the scan came from the original wall. Terminal same one Elena always used. Same time, too. Almost to the minute of when she had collapsed. Everyone brushed it off as a tech issue. No big deal. Until it happened again. This time, someone actually saw it happen. One of the float nurses was headed down to the vending machines near the ICU elevator bank when she passed the wall scanner. It lit up, beeped, then went dark again. She turned around, thinking maybe someone was behind her, but the hallway was empty. No footsteps, no doors opening, just a cold draft. The screen flashed green. 11:14 p.m. Again. The weird part was that it kept happening on the same nights Elena had been scheduled before she died. Same badge scanner. always at 11:14. We started joking softly, of course, that maybe she was just really committed to her job. The ICU lights sometimes flickered when it happened. Once, a patient's vitals jumped for exactly 1 minute after the badge. Scan heart rates spiked. O2 rose, then flatlined again. The patient had already been declared brain dead, but the monitor disagreed. For exactly 60 seconds, it tried to deactivate her credentials again, this time manually. They even replaced the entire badge reader panel on that wall, thinking it might be stuck, but the logs kept showing her name, and only hers. No other badge ever glitched, just hers. On her nights, at her time, one night, about 2 weeks after Elena passed, a nurse named Drew swore he saw her. Said he was walking past Trauma Bay 2 when he caught a glimpse through the window. A nurse with her, same posture, same bun, same Naver scrubs, was adjusting the 4-pole inside. He opened the door immediately. No one was there, though the fourth had been changed. The line was taped down, just the way Elena used to do it. A week after that, a janitor quit without notice. She refused to work nights on that floor anymore. Said she heard someone humming in the locker room, soft and shaky, like someone trying to remember a lullaby they used to know. She walked in, expecting to find someone on break. The room was empty. The smell of lavender lingered, just like it had in room 2. After that, they closed off the scanner, built a plywood box around it, and put up a sign that said, "Under maintenance." The logs stopped. The badge didn't ping again, but then a new nurse joined a month later. She was assigned Elena's old schedule. Same days, same hours. The first week was normal, but the second week, she found a sticky note on her clipboard at 11:15 p.m. sharp. Vitals corrected. You're welcome. She thought it was a prank, but when she asked around, no one admitted to writing it, and the patient's vitals had, in fact, been corrected on input error she hadn't caught. Not even the attending noticed it. We still don't talk about Elena openly. Her lock has been reassigned. Her ID is inactive. But sometimes, when you walk by that old wall terminal at 11:14 p.m., the screen flickers, just a tiny pulse of green. And if you're unlucky enough to be on her old shift, check your notes twice, because someone else might already have. You're safe now, but just in case. If the scanner lights up behind you, keep walking, and don't turn around. This happened during my second year working as a hospital float nurse. If you're not familiar with that role, it basically means I could be pulled into any department on any given shift. Med-surg, psych, pediatrics, even ICU. Most nights were boring, tedious vitals. But this night still creeps me out, because what happened couldn't be explained by a charting error, or tired eyes, or hospital gossip. It was just after 2:45 a.m. when it started. I had been pulled to the east wing of the hospital's post-surgical recovery floor. It was quiet, low patient load. I had time to breathe, maybe too much time. At some point, I remember looking at the board and seeing the room list update. Room 314 had a new patient, James Hollister, post-op observation. I didn't remember an admission, but things slip through sometimes. The name didn't ring any bells, so I walked down the hall to check on him. Room 314 was on a corner, old room. Hadn't been used in a while. I remember flicking the light on and stopping in the doorway. The bed was made. Empty. Monitor. Dark. Number. Just a quiet, untouched room. I stepped back out, checked my handheld device again. Still, said James Hollister. Admitted at 2:43 a.m. Vitals pending. I returned to the nurse's station and asked if anyone had just wheeled in a new No one came through since 1. One of them said, "You sure it wasn't a board glitch?" That's what I figured. The board updates from time to time with weird ghost entries. I removed the patient name manually, marked the room as clean and unassigned. Problem solved. Or so I thought. A few minutes later, the code blue alarm went off. It came from room 3. Someone asked. I said yes. They said it didn't matter, we had to follow protocol. So 2 of us grabbed crash carts and ran. As we approached, I could already hear the monitor. Flatline tone. Long, endless beep. When we opened the door, the light was off, but the monitor was on. It was showing a flat line. Heart rate 0, but the bed still empty. Same as before. No patient. Just that tone. Just the quiet hum of something that should have been impossible. We silenced the alarm manually and called IT to reset the board. They said there was no record of a patient ever being entered into room 314 that night. No James Hollister. No wristbands scanned. No chart. I told myself it was a system bug. Just a bizarre coincidence. But then it happened again. 2 nights later. Different department. This time, I was on the orthopedic wing. 2:43 a.m. New name appears on the board. James Hollister. Room 414. Same formatting. Same spelling. Same post-op observation label. This time, I walked to room 414. Empty bed. Fresh linens. Nothing connected. I didn't wait for the code this time. I flagged it to the charge nurse immediately. But just as I was showing her my screen, the board blinked. Refreshed. The patient entry was gone. She gave me a weird look. Maybe you need sleep, she said. That was a Thursday. I took the weekend off. Stayed with family. Tried to shake it off. But Monday night, it came back. Room 514. Same time, same name, same pattern. I stopped telling people after that. No one believed me. Not until the night someone else responded. It was a newer nurse, Demi, I think. She was filling in for someone on med-surg. She didn't know the story. Didn't know about the name. She came running to the station around 3:05 a.m. Pale as paper. I heard it, she said. We asked what she meant. She looked at all of us. Eyes glassy. I heard the code, she said. It was coming from inside the room. She said she opened the door, and there was a man lying in the bed. Older, pale, eyes closed, wearing a gown, hooked to a monitor. She went to check his pulse and he was cold. She panicked, ran for help. But when they got back, the bed was empty. No sign of anyone. The monitor was off. Vitals gone. No patient. No sign anyone had been there at all. Except for one thing. A used ECG pad, still stuck to the pillow, and a trace of something written on the wall in dry erase marker. Hollister, 247. That was the last straw for a lot of us. We stopped assigning patients to any room ending in 14. Just to be safe. Someone even contacted administration. They looked into it quietly, off the record, and they found something weird. Back in 2003, there was a man named James Hollister. He had been admitted post-op for an abdominal repair. Apparently, there was a surgical complication. He coded 3 separate times in the same night. But on the 3rd code, the crash team was delayed due to overlapping emergencies. By the time someone reached him, he'd No one knows exactly how long he had been calling out before that. The last vitals on record for him, 2:47 a.m. There was some rumor that his call bell had been disconnected accidentally, that he died alone, pressing a button no one heard. They say some nurses heard the code alarm on repeat for days after, but the system was never recording it. Just the sound in the hallway, just after 2:45 a.m. and always gone by sunrise. I transferred out of that hospital not long after, not because of the ghost stories, but because I couldn't stand checking the board at night anymore. Every time it refreshed, my heart would skip a beat, just waiting to see it. James Hollister, post-op observation, room __14. You're safe now, but just in case, don't check the board after 2:47.